Buying and selling is good and necessary. It is very necessary, and may possibly be very good. But it cannot be the noblest work of man, and let us hope that it may not in our time be esteemed the noblest work of an Englishman. 19th century novelist Anthony Trollope. I learned to look more upon the bright side of my condition, and less upon the dark side, and to consider what I enjoyed rather than what I wanted. And this gave me sometimes such secret comforts that I cannot express them, and which I take notice of here, to put those disconnected people in mind of it, who cannot enjoy comfortably what God has given them, because they see and covet something that he has not given them. All our discontents about what we want appeared to me to spring from the want of thankfulness for what we have. Daniel Defoe in Robinson Crusoe. Satire is a sort of glass, wherein beholders do generally discover everybody's face but their own, which is the chief reason for that kind reception it meets with in the world, and that so very few are offended with it. Jonathan Swift. Mercantilism was the dominant economic theory of the first half of the 18th century. Its principles were the accumulation of bullion, i.e. precious metals, rivalry between nation-states, and maintaining a favourable balance of high exports and low imports. Unlike Adam Smith's later theories of supply and demand and wealth creation, mercantilism supposed that there was a finite amount of wealth in the world. Nations had to go out and acquire that wealth by setting up colonies and selling New World and Eastern goods to other countries for gold and silver. As opposed to free trade or the economic liberalism that Adam Smith promoted, mercantilism advocated for protectionism and tariffs. In opposition to the interdependence Smith would envisage, mercantilism wanted countries to be self-sufficient. Unlike the anarchic competition within nations that Smith favoured, in which enlightened self-interest benefited the common good, mercantilism was about strictly regulating the economy so that only certain trusted individuals and companies could operate with royal license, subsidies and monopolies on production. Nations were in effect brands, accumulating international consumer trust for quality and luxury, such as the French reputation for fine things. Mercantilism was capitalism as a team sport, where America was in Britain's squad. Obviously, with the eventual emergence of the United States by the 1770s, there were serious flaws with mercantilism, and the colonies rebelled because they were not allowed to trade with anyone apart from the mother country. At home, too, there were accusations of corruption made against the government for awarding contracts to friends rather than on the basis of competency or merit. One such company given royal charter when it was founded in 1600 by Elizabeth I was the East India Company, which was one of many such East India companies, including those of Denmark, Sweden, and the Netherlands. At this time, India was far richer and potentially more powerful than England. There was a lot of danger involved in opening up the country for trade in spices and textiles, so merchants banded together to share the risk and profits. By the middle of the 18th century, the venture had been a commercial success for over 100 years, and it flooded Britain with luxury goods from China and the subcontinent. Domestic reactions to the whole endeavour were mixed. Religious revivalist John Wesley, founder of the Methodist Church, railed against the corrupting influence of tea on the British public. Cartoonist William Hogarth depicted cracking porcelain as a fragile foundation of national wealth, and Edmund Burke expressed concern about the contaminating effects of the colonial project on national character. The company eventually grew from coastal trading forts to general occupation of all India, backed by its own private army, and then, eventually, the British Crown took over direct governance in the mid-19th century. Daniel Defoe is most famous for his book Robinson Crusoe, first published in 1719, which is considered to be one of the first novels in English, although it was originally marketed as a true story travelogue. It tells the tale of a middle-class second son who finds himself shipwrecked on a desert island, at least initially entirely alone, and decides to build a self-sufficient life from scratch with the help of an indigenous manservant he christens Friday. Defoe was taken in by a lot of dodgy business schemes and hence got into considerable debt and was constantly pursued by his creditors. One of his friends was William Paterson, who dreamt up the Darien scheme to establish a Scottish colony in South America in the 1690s, whose total failure indirectly led to the Act of Union with England in 1707 to create the Kingdom of Great Britain. Defoe's tour through the whole island of Great Britain was one of a number of such travel books that attempted to unify the nations imaginatively, to which Humphrey Clinker by Tobias Smollett also belongs. Thanks to Robinson Crusoe, the castaway trope looms large in popular culture. Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels is often considered to be a children's book or a fairy tale, but it is primarily a satire of early 18th century society, in which the gullible protagonist voyages through the lands of little people, big people, scientists, and horses, respectively. His modest proposal of 1729 is a satirical response to the contemporary famine in his native Ireland, in which he suggests that the population turn to infant cannibalism to solve their problems. As you may infer, Swift's form of satire was rather dark, and many accused him of being a misanthrope. He was quite like a Frankie Boyle of the 1700s in that regard. Swift's disgust for humanity and relishing in that revulsion had a huge influence on Hogarth. His early poem, Description of a Shower, reads, "Sweepings from the butcher's stalls, dung, guts and blood, drowned puppies, stinking sprats, all drenched in mud, dead cats and turnip tops come tumbling down the flood."